think about it day and night. I feel like a king, oh yeah. And baby, can't help but stare. Such a rush, baby. I want you to touch me, baby. Such a rush, baby.
Guys and dolls, cats and chicks, goats and lambs, you have tuned into Viva ENT, rock, pop, and soul, and sometimes jazz. So I'm Devin the Dude. And I'm here with Gary Tobin of Cascadia Groups. Say hi to Seattle, Gary.
Hello, Seattle. How are you doing?
Fantastic.
Great to be on the show.
Fantastic. And we also have the greatest producer on all of radio, Mr. Eric.
Hey, it's Eric. CC Rider.
Right on. And before we get to started, we got to talk about the Viva ENT Talk Radio Rock, Pop, and Soul Facebook group. 1,200 members strong and growing by the day. Great community of music, and it's getting better by the day, just like my YouTube channel, Devin Creisler Studios. Over 1,600 band videos, including Cascadia Groove, which you were playing at Bake's Place in Bellevue last week.
And again, we were just asked to come back on the 12th
of March.
Of March, yeah. So a week from this Saturday, we're back at Bake's.
Oh wow! I might have to come out there if that's all right.
That actually, yes, of course, anytime. That just came up today, so the months keep getting filled in here.
I know about that. I work in AV, which stands for always variable. So always changing every day. So Gary, you've been playing with Cascadia Groove, and you're original composer and your lead guitar player. How long have you been playing music?
Wow, that's an interesting one. Piano at 5, started violin at 6, was taught for free by the director of the San Diego Symphony, Dr. Robert Emile, for about 14 years.
Wow.
And ended up playing in the San Diego Symphony for a bit as a kid. Somewhere around 7th grade or so, my friends looked at me and said, yeah, so you can play violin, you might as well be good at ballet for all we care. We need a guitar player. And so I decided at 12 years old to pick up the guitar and figure that out, which I did. And my dad said he'd buy me an amp when I learned all the chords. So I stopped and thought about it. And my dad was a hell of a trumpet player, like Maynard Ferguson level player. And he had his favorite groups at the time were Blood, Sweat, and Tears in Chicago and all that kind of stuff. So I went through his albums and I took the two top hits from Blood, Sweat, and Tears in Chicago and learned them. So I told my dad, okay, I think you need to buy me an amp and a guitar now because I know all the chords. And he said, well, what do you know? And I said, well, name a tune. And He named one of those 4 tunes, and I played it for him. And he goes, well, okay, I owe you an amp and a guitar.
That's awesome.
There you go. That's where it started.
And the rest is history.
Yeah, well, sort of. Yeah, there's a lot of work in there from that point forward. But
and then
I got my first guitar. It was a Sears Tiesco and a Fender Princeton. So there you go. Played with Sandy Greenbaum. That was my first official band. And Sandy is a great drummer that moved from San Diego, where we all grew up, up to here. He's playing with a number of groups up here. So to see Sandy, say hi.
I'll have to try to connect with him.
He's a great player.
How many bands have you been in?
Oh,
too many to count.
I think anybody that plays has probably, played in. I mean, anybody that plays it has gotten past 50 or so has probably played in so many bands you can't even recall. So,
well, what about currently though? What bands are you in?
I am actively involved in 3. CG Cascadia Groove obviously is the primary because we're doing largely my material. and I decided to do that because I got tired of spending time learning somebody else's stuff and not developing my own. So that started years ago, actually down in Ventura, California, in a similar band to CG called Ellington Street. And we did the same kind of deal where we did the originals and we took it out to wine country down there in Santa Barbara, and that led to other opportunities that were fun. But up here, CG is my first priority, and then I also play with the Hammond brothers, Broham, and those are brothers that all grew up in Everett and other places. They were actually, their dad was a military guy, and they were over in Germany for a while. But these guys all grew up singing. They would do doo-wop on the corners, and they've all had careers and have. Some of them have retired, and the three brothers, put a band back together, and they contacted me after I left Kalimba. So Kalimba is an Earth, Wind, and Fire tribute group that I also play with. I was full-time with them, and for about 5 years, Chaz Thomas and I started that group many years ago, about 12 years ago. And Kalimba does well. They're all over the place. They play, of course, locally at Bakes and other places in the area, but they've also played in Moscow and just recently in Dubai and Oman and all over the world. So they're doing pretty good. I get the call once in a while to fill in for them. And then there's a Zydeco group that I play with whenever the opportunity arises. But that's few and far between. So there you go. Actively three groups, primarily CG, and once in a while a Zydeco gig.
What's incredible that you're in all these bands, and I was able to record Kalimba years ago back at the University of Washington. They had like a parking lot garage, like a concert there. So it's cool. Our paths may have crossed before.
Yeah, they do concerts on a big stage that overlooks the parking lot there. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been covering the 90s on Viva ENT. What were you doing in the 90s?
In the 90s, I was with my jazz group down in Ventura with Ellington Street. And like I said, we leveraged that to go play in the wineries. And we were able to get our stuff out in front of, some important folks. I'm not, some well-known folks, and played at their parties in Montecito and Santa Barbara. There's a lot of Hollywood folks that live up in that area. So there was a lot of those kinds of gigs.
Wow. And I understand beyond when you were playing, you were also like setting up digital audio equipment around the North and South America. You've been fairly worldly.
Well, music, as my father had advised me as a kid, when we were trying to decide, we make 18-year-olds make these decisions about what they're going to do for the rest of their life without any life experience, which is always really interesting. So my violin teacher, Dr. Emil, had lined up all these scholarships. And so, at 17, 18, when I was graduating from high school, they were asking, well, what do you want to do in the rest of your life? And Dr. Emil was saying, I have scholarships for you. And my grandmother, my dad's mom, who was a touring concert pianist, tapped me on the knee, and we went in the kitchen. We had a little chit chat. And she said, don't do this.
Don't
do music.
Don't pursue music as your main career.
Right. Yeah. And she gave the same advice to her son, my father. And he ended up being a doctor. And without going into all the details of what she said, my dad summarized it in that meeting. And I'll preface this with apologies to existing full-time musicians, because this was a comment directed towards me. It was not meant to be offensive to others, but his perspective, I think, is interesting. He said, find guys that are good enough to play for a living, but smart enough not to. So, a little offensive. There are some friends of mine that are doing quite well in music full time, but for the most of us, the music biz is not a merit-based system. It has nothing to do with how good you are. Once you are to a certain level of ability, It has everything to do with branding and networking and building business alliances with your brand that affiliate and leverage other businesses that have a larger reach and larger exposure than you. So that's the trick. And they don't teach that in school. So
you got to market yourself. Otherwise, that's why I'm always documenting shows. Like if I don't, then it's like it's gone into the ether after the gig.
Yeah, building a brand and leveraging the brand and brand management and building those kinds of alliances with entities larger than you that benefit from your association. That is how you get out there and get a profile and succeed. Most musicians believe that, gee, if I just keep getting better, that I will therefore succeed. And that's not the case. I know guys today, the Dazumov brothers being two, that are just absolutely incredible. Farko Dazumov is a local bass player. He's just unbelievably great. And his brother, Fyodor, is, my jaw drops every time I watch him play. He's just so far and above what anybody else that I know. And, he's as good or better than Satriani or Vi or any of these guys, but, no recognition because, the brand thing. So he does have profile. He's out there on jam tracks and whatnot. I would suggest folks go out there and Google Fyodor Dazumov and Farko Dazumov. They're quite incredible. But again, the business is not merit-based. If it were merit-based, these guys would be wildly successful. So when it comes down to making it, you can write original stuff. You can play covers, et cetera, et cetera. Unless you build a brand, it's not going to do anything more than give you some local gigs, and that's about it.
Well, you guys played some great covers and originals at Bake's Place. The music was so hot, the fire alarm went off after the show.
Yeah.
So it was a second time in 2 weeks I've seen a fire alarm go off during a show, but the first time was too much haze. But well, you write a lot of original songs. I wonder if we can hear one right now, like maybe This Time.
Sure. Yeah. This Time was written a number of years ago, and Celine Dion's publisher wanted Celine to do it, and she was in the middle of taking care of her ailing husband at the time and was not actively involved in the business. So it kind of came and went. But yeah, it's a good piece. Not typical of what we're doing in the jazz band, but it's a good piece.
All right, let's take a listen.
All right.
This kind of love consumes me, blistering love, it soothes. I feel waves wash over me. I can feel waves rise up from inside me. This time I found my way. I see the heat rise, shimmering sounds of our life. I feel waves wash over me. I can feel rise up from inside me. This time I found my way. This time I found my way to you.
Wow, I could belong in a James Bond opening soundtrack.
Yeah, it's a cool track. Definitely kind of trip hoppy.
Yeah, that's called Operatica. Actually, it's a cross between a kind of an ethereal voice with hip hop background to it. So that's definitely movie music. It's not really what the jazz band is doing, but I have a whole collection of stuff on my hard drive that is would be typical for some sort of movie backing tracks. So
reminiscent of Massive Attack or more Chiba, bands like that for sure.
Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah.
And what's your creative process like?
I don't. It's odd, and I hear that I hear other people have this same process. I don't typically construct pieces together. I don't compose per se. I hear songs complete in my head. I'll dream this stuff. I wake up with it and come into the studio and put it in. I do what I call transcribe. I hear these things in my head and they're fully complete. All the instruments are done. Everything's done. I just sit down at the keyboard and I choose the bass line, I enter it. I choose the drum line, I enter it. I choose the guitar line, I enter it. The keys, the strings, the horns. I just transcribe the material in as I hear it in my head. So and it's literally complete from start to finish.
And you have to like reverse engineer what you had like an audible vision.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I'm taking what is already there and complete. It's like I'm tapping into some sort of stream of stuff out there, and then I just transcribe it into the computer.
And then you make some incredible content.
I don't really take credit for it, but thank you, because I don't think it's me. I think it's coming from somewhere else. I just happen to be the channel that it flows through.
And you got to capture that moment. I mean, I've never seen the same moment twice. So,
right, yeah, you do, and so sometimes it comes at really weird times. I'll be driving, and then I'll have to pick up my phone and start to sing lines into the phone to remember what it is that's going on. So,
wow,
there's always music playing in my head. I'll just put it that way.
Oh, same here. It's constant. What's here's some of your other tracks like you got like Forest, like you're probably in Cascadia. That's all about this area of the world of forest and water, like from British Columbia to Oregon.
If you notice that the Forest tune is spelt with 2 R's, because I was sitting down watching Forrest Gump, and at the very end of the movie there is a line that they play in the credits. And that one little line, I triggered this whole cascade of a tune that came out.
And
so I went into the studio and and the rest just came through. And this tune was born just from that.
Wow. Well, we'll take a listen here.
All right, sure. Here comes that line. Right here. That's the line.
Well, yeah, that's definitely a spark that set off quite a fire there of song music. That is a
Yeah, that tune. That is Keith Stone on sax, by the way. So none of this stuff can really come to fruition without the members of the band. So we have Alex Sheldon on drums. We have Paul Sherman on bass. We have Keith Stone on sax, and we also have Tracy Syrad on sax and vocals. She's our secret weapon. I think her stage name is Tracy Jones. And we have Pat Azzarillo on keys. And that's what we take out live. Some of that studio stuff, most of that is played by me in the studio. But without these guys, there's no taking it live. There's no getting exposure. And that song itself is actually being used as the promotional tune for the Lake Chelan Wine and Jazz Festival that's coming up May 19th through the 22nd.
And yeah, you have a bunch of shows coming up, I understand, and more manifesting by the day.
Oh yeah, the calendar is filling up. I think as COVID lifts, there's this huge rush of venues trying to book bands. So it's a scramble, definitely. So we're going to be playing at the Lake Chelan Wine and Jazz Festival from Thursday the 19th through the 21st, and then on the 22nd, I think the Jazz Festival has a big band thing going on there.
And coming up just in March here, March.
The other band I play in, the Hammond Brothers, Broham, is also playing out there during that same period of time. So it's a great show. They have Manhattan Transfer that's going to be their headliner out there this year.
Wow. I got to come out to that. That's
yeah, it's great. It's a great gig. It's a great show. It's definitely worth the trip.
And you've got some other shows coming right up, like March 4th and 5th. The Hammond Brothers are playing up in Bainbridge Island.
Yeah, we're actually I'm going to rehearsal tonight, and then we're going to be playing at Clearwater Casino Friday and Saturday night. The Hammond Brothers.
That's awesome.
And then the following weekend, Cascadia Groove is back at Bakes on the 12th. The following weekend, Cascadia Groove is playing at Rockfish on the 19th. Then it just keeps going from there.
Like April 9th in Bellingham.
Yeah. Oh yeah. At the Hotel Bellwether in Bellingham on, where is that? Where is that? Hotel Bellwether in Bellingham is on July 14th. We're jumping ahead of ourselves. CG is playing at Eagle Haven Winery up at this end of the Sound, the north end, on the 18th of June. Kalimba's playing stuff. There's a gig in Indiana. I'm playing on the 11th of June. So.
Oh, you're getting all around the country.
We're jumping on a plane, going to go do that.
And then a real big gig on July 23rd. It's the 100-year anniversary of the bridge at Deception Pass Park.
Yeah, the Deception Pass Bridge 100-year anniversary, and they I got the phone call to ask us to go play in Deception Pass Park. So I wrote a tune for the bridge, and kind of a Pat Metheny-esque thing, and we'll be playing it live, and that's on the 23rd of July. And that's going to be fun because that's kind of a big deal, the 100-year anniversary of that bridge. If you've ever been up there, if you haven't, you should go. It's the number one tourist spot in the state of Washington.
Wow, it's a celebration. Could we? I don't think this is the song that is for the past, but "Celebration" is one of your original songs. And,
yeah, Celebration is, yeah. I've actually got a tune for the bridge. It's not Celebration, but you can play that one if you want. It's a favorite for folks.
I'm celebrating that we can play music again live.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's been a long road.
Yeah, man.
It's very uplifting and lighthearted.
Yeah, it is. It's a very up tune. Folks like that, and that is one of the tunes that actually gets that in Forest gets probably the most comment. We haven't debuted Crystal Bowl, and we have not debuted On the One.
So this will be the first time they're ever on the air or in the world outside of your computer.
Yeah, Crystal. If you want to play Crystal Bowl, that's the first time that it's going to be publicly out there. So yeah, go ahead and roll that.
How about we do that after the break? We're going to do a quick commercial break, and then we'll come back, and then we'll play Crystal Bowl.
Cool. All right.
Everybody stay tuned for more Viva ENT.
All right, welcome back to Viva ENT, rock, pop, and soul, and all that jazz. Today, we're featuring Gary Tobin. He's the lead composer for Cascadia Groove, and this is the song "Crystal Bowl." And this is a debut as well.
coming up here.
Who's the singer on these tracks? She's great.
I'll tell you. The singing is actually software.
Oh, really? Wow. Software's come a long way.
It has, and it allowed me to control what, the style of singing and the notes that are being sung,
Right.
and the vowel shapes and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, who was the singer on this time that we played earlier?
That was Merlin Drake.
Okay.
Bob Drake, who I found out just recently died. It was very sad, kind of a shock to my system that he did. He and I were buds down in Ventura, Santa Barbara. He was a classical guitar teacher at a college in Santa Barbara. And he did a tour through Russia. And when he came back, he had Merlin on his arm. And he introduced her to me, and he said she barely speaks English. She understands English, but can barely speak it. But she has an amazing voice. And so we went into the studio, and this gal that was speaking broken English with a heavy Russian accent had this voice where there was no evidence of any Russian accent at all.
Wow.
And that was her voice. I just remember sitting in the control room going, holy crap, this girl's voice is amazing.
Yeah.
And so Bob and I were good buds. We did gigs in Santa Barbara for a long time, and unfortunately he recently passed.
Oh. Sorry to hear that.
Oh yeah, I mean, you get to my age, I'm 63, so you get to my age, and there's a number of friends that have passed. So it's always grateful to be alive and doing material like this on a daily basis. So I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah. What can you tell us about this track that we're playing now, Crystal Ball? What was the inspiration there?
A friend of mine, Steve Hampton, does this vibrational therapy treatment, and he uses crystal bowls to do that. And he said he wanted to do an album of music centered around crystal bowls. And I said, okay, so send me a track of a crystal bowl in C. Just send it to me. Make sure it's not sharp or flat, that it's right on C. And so he sends me this recording, and if you listen for it, if you know what if you know where C is, it's this. If you hear that, and you can hear that tone that goes throughout the entire tune.
And that's a crystal bowl that's making that C in the background?
It's making the crystal bowl is that drone that's in the background. You can barely, you hear it underneath, and all the chords are diatonic or are harmonically related to C. So I sat down just listening to the bowl, and I pulled up these samples of these gals' voices on the software, and once again, boom, this tune just dropped on me from start to finish. All that stuff on the guitar was one take through, as are the other recordings. Because when the inspiration hits, you just grab it and you turn on the recorder and you go.
Wow.
And it's all that stuff is one take. In fact, most of the stuff they're guide tracks for the band. They're really not finished recordings. This time is a finished recording. I believe that that's it. This time is of the collection that you have there. This time is the only finished recording. Brasilia is a finished recording if you want to play that one.
Oh yeah,
Normalcy
Brasilia is
a
great.
Finished recording. Bullfighters are a finished recording. Duck Toes sorta is. It's close to it.
Yeah, you played Brasilia at Bake's place, and it's in Portuguese.
Yeah,
and Tracy knows Portuguese enough to.
Yeah, part of my time doing the whole balance between work and music. We touched upon this earlier. I instead chose a career in architecture instead of doing music full time, and architecture brings in the money, which allowed me to do music on my terms without having to be dictated what, where, when, who, why I'm playing, stuff that I may or may not like.
Right, you're your own boss when it comes to your new music projects.
So that was the conversations that my grandmother had with me, that you don't get to control any of the terms if it's your living. You just have to go do it. But if you do something else for money, then you get to control the terms all the time. And so the thing that feeds you emotionally and spiritually will always be something that is done on your terms. So I thought that was very wise of her. And I, certainly had career crisis for most of my life because, you want to do music for a living, but financially, in most cases, it's not viable. So,
but you were down in Brazil at one point, right? And
well, that was part of my work life because I was working for companies that were developing. This was back in the early 90s when digital audio, putting waveforms up on computer screens and slicing them up and having multiple tracks of that, was replacing 2-inch tape in the studio. So I was a regional sales guy for Spectral, then Euphonics, then Sonic Solutions, then Fairlight. And all of those companies, I was dealing with territories, everything west of the Mississippi in the U.S., the Asian Rim, Central and South America. So I was traveling all the time, and it was great having somebody pay for your time. But it wasn't what most folks think. It wasn't romantic to be able to get in planes and sleep in hotels and live out of your suitcases for 2 weeks out of every month for years on end, because you just went to the hotel room, to restaurants, and to studios. That's all you did. You didn't get to go out and see and tour, be a tourist. But
you're inspired by being in Brazil to write the song.
Well, a couple of times, you get down there and you're down there for a couple of weeks, so you have the weekend to yourself. And my sponsor was Carlos de Andrade, who very talented guy, runs the label down in Rio called Vizome, and he has a number of nationally known artists on Vizome. And he, introduced me, showed me around on the weekends, and part of that was going out and seeing the Brazilian forest, and that is what inspired this tune.
All right,
nice.
Let's hear. Want to hear a little more of it? And there's so much life in the forest you saw, so
and
that's
here
why.
comes the lead guitar part, my favorite part.
Here we go.
Going on and for that recording, but now the tune has Tracy singing lyrics in Portuguese.
Yeah, that was incredible. Yeah, on the And yeah, that song definitely has Viva vibes.
Yeah, as does Duck Toes and a number of other stuff. A lot of stuff I write is written in the Latin Afro-Cuban style. Growing up in San Diego, I was exposed to a lot of that, and it kind of filters through the material.
Definitely. And big shout out to Jules Avalon for connecting us. She's singing for Lounge Vultures now, but she sang for you for a while.
Yeah, Jules, it's just been part of the evolution. I've gone through 2 drummers, literally 20 keyboard players. I'm not kidding, 20 keyboard players. And we've added Keith. Thankfully, Keith Stone has come on board, and Jules Avalon was singing with us for a number of years. And she, I guess, had some stuff going on with life and kids, and you know how things get. And she bowed out for a while, and we grabbed Tracy in the meantime. And but Jules has been really supportive, and I love her to death. She's great. And she referred you to me, and then we met at Bakes, and there we go.
Yeah, definitely have to bring Jules along on one of these shows when you're playing at Bakes again, because you usually play up north. You're based out of like Bainbridge Island, or
No, we're the band is kind of centered around Anacortes. I live in Oak Harbor. Paul Sherman, the bassist player, lives in Anacortes. Keith Stone, the sax player, he works at Northwest Rigging. We actually play and we rehearse in Northwest Rigging's front office. Alex Sheldon is north of Bellingham, and Tracy Jones is in Bellingham. So we all kind of come together in Anacortes. It's central.
And then Pat comes out of Issaquah, so it's a bit of a trip. But
yeah, that the whole process of finding great keyboard players that can have conversations about voicings and inversions, and as you can tell, some of the material is got some complex harmonies to it, complex chord structures, and complex rhythms, and so it's finding cats that can actually have conversations about that is sometimes tough, and so that's why I've gone through so many keyboard players. So it's hard to find guys that not only mix well from a personality standpoint with a group, because as you know, being in a group is like being married in many respects. So there's scheduling, there's time together, there's playing, figuring out the material. So there's a huge component of personal chemistry that comes into that, as well as having chops.
And your base knowledge, yeah, if you know your music theory, then you can bounce around, no big deal. But if not, then if you stumble, it's evident.
Yeah. So I think that when we were talking earlier, the conversation I had was like, if you're playing an F7 sharp 9, sharp 5, and we have a conversation of rotating the inversion of that so that the top note of the chord is playing along with the melody. And, sometimes you get deer in the headlight looks.
Yeah, it's a lot of math in music. So your formulas.
Yeah, it is.
Then
it is. But I think that musicians that play from the heart, that's not really what you do when you play. You hear things and you play things, and you taught your brain where the notes are and the distances between notes. So there's this intuitive intervallic understanding you have of where notes are, so that when you hear them, you can just play them. The only aspect about theory is that when you have to talk to somebody else about what's going on, and you're not physically there in front of them and having a conversation and physically playing, you have to be able to notate it. You have to be able to describe it in verbal terms, and that's where theory comes in. Outside of that, though, learning music is like learning language. We didn't, as kids growing up, we didn't learn to speak by somebody sitting down with us and describing a lexicon in the alphabet and the rules of grammar. We listened and we modeled.
Yep.
We listened and we modeled. We listened and we modeled. That's all we. And the same thing with music. Same thing with anything. You listen and you model. Then On the backside, you can understand how the rules apply and how structure works and what this means and what that means. Trying to learn it from the classical perspective of learning what things mean before you've internalized music, it makes it really tough to actually learn it and have it come from your heart. Coming from your head, yeah, there's guys that I know, jazz players that I know, that play entirely from their head, and you hear it. They don't play with a whole lot of soul. Very proficient, very technical, but there's not a whole lot of feeling involved.
You got to be able to, play with others. So we're running out of time, but where can we find you on social media?
CascadiaGroove.com is CG's website, and Facebook, you just type in Cascadia Groove Band. On YouTube, it's Cascadia Groove, and we have videos and stuff out there. Same thing with Broham. Broham's out there at broham.com. Same thing with Kalimba. You can type in Kalimba, the Spirit of Earth, Wind, and Fire. That they always have fun videos. So there you go. That's out there. I don't have my own personal website. I probably should do one, but most of what I do is done through other bands, because you can't take this stuff live without people involved, of course.
Oh, it takes a village to make music happen.
I mean, I sit at home and write this stuff in the studio, but it doesn't really benefit anybody sitting here in the studio, and unless I have the ability to take it out live. So having folks that can do this material and flow together is hugely important. So I don't try to promote myself. I just get out there and play the material. And
what's your next project? Do you have plans for that, or it'll just come to you at the right time?
I started to think about doing sync licensing, but I'm not sure that I really want to do that, nor do I think that I have the time during my day to do that, because I still am working. I still have to have obligations to my employer. And at the end of the day, I go into the studio, but that's not enough time to write new material as it comes to me and also do the whole sync licensing thing. So I'm not sure. I just think I'm very happy with what's going on right now, and that is writing and playing. And that's fine for me. It's a compulsion, so this just provides the outlet.
And I just love rolling video. I'm the camera dude, so I'll definitely be coming out to your shows this year. Well, it's great that we had you on the show. We're running out of time. We'll have to have you back. What song should we go out on? I was thinking either Duck Toes or what do you think? Yes, throw Duck Toes out there. Why not? Or Normalcy, or Bullfighter. Bullfighter's a good one. Oh yeah, you got some great music videos too that you've made too online. So
right, yeah.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, to Viva ENT.
Thanks for listening, folks.
Yep. Have a great evening.
Thanks.